Do 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 do. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of How Film Financing Works on the Unlimited Creation Show with Kyle Barnes. I'm your host, Kyle Barnes, and today we're going to learn why net profits are real when the producers know what they're doing. Alright guys, thank you for bearing with me once again as I practice my off-the-cuff, posh English accent. Net profits. Net profits in Hollywood is a taboo word. There are historical accounts of massive films such as Forrest Gump that still report that it lost money or made no dollars after creative bookkeeping. Now, what is creative bookkeeping? Creative bookkeeping is a way that scally distributors and producers make sure that the film never makes profits on paper. This was a massive, massive problem that was brought to light in the late 2010s and early 2020s about these scally practices. There were a handful of methods that scally distribution companies would implement to accomplish this theft. Off the top of my head, the main ones are marketing expenses. For example, if a distributor had a film on their roster that made, let's say, $50,000 that quarter, they would claim that they spent $50,000 of marketing. Therefore, they don't owe the production company anything because they're recouping their $50,000 of marketing expenses. Yes, indeed, although there is some marketing in film, often scally companies, and I'm not talking about all companies, I'm talking about scally companies, would inflate this number when indeed perhaps they spent $5,000 or $0 on marketing. They would claim that they spent $50,000 on marketing on their books, and there really isn't always a way to prove this unless the filmmakers want to come up with the money for audit. A lot of these companies were banking that the filmmakers either didn't have enough money or didn't think it would be worth it to spend the $10,000 it could take to audit. And oftentimes it doesn't. Unless a filmmaker truly believes that they're owed $10,000, it doesn't make sense to audit these companies. So that's another way that these companies get away with theft. It's just a few $1,000s here and a few $1,000s there, but times that by massive libraries of hundreds of films, and they're quickly making hundreds of thousands of dollars in pure out in the open theft. Another way they would implement creative bookkeeping to make sure films never saw profit is through cross-collateralization. I really can't stand this one, and it should be illegal, but oftentimes it's not. And unless a filmmaker puts this in their contract, they can get eaten alive by this. So what it basically means is a distributor might have a library of, let's say, 100 films. They're going to have their top performing films, they're going to have their mid-level films, and they're going to have their smaller films. They're going to give most of their attention to their larger films. Let's say they spent $100,000 in marketing on that top film. Instead of billing that top film and pissing off their filmmakers with $100,000, they want to keep the filmmakers at the top happy. So they'll cross-collateralize that marketing spend and put the spend on the other film. So maybe they'll bill their top film only for $20,000 of marketing expenses, even when they spent $100,000 marketing in it. And the other $80,000 they will deduct from the rest of the films in their library, which maybe they didn't even market at all. That's why sometimes these really tiny films are getting hit with $1,000 or $2,000 marketing spends on their quarterly reports, when really there was no marketing at all spent on their movie. I just talked to a girl where this happened. Cross-collateralization is a massive problem, and if you're an independent filmmaker, make sure that you get no cross-collateralization clause in your contract. It means that a distributor cannot recoup any marketing expenses from another film against the profits or against the earnings of your film. So to recap, we have inflated or uncapped marketing expenses, and we have cross-collateralization. A third thing off the top of my head that I know that scally distributors will do is they will deduct expenses, or they will have a lot of hidden expenses. It's similar to marketing, but basically what a distributor will do is they will tack on a lot of expenses on top of the film, meaning they will go around to film festivals and wine and dine themselves for $5,000 or $10,000 a festival, and then they will cross-collateralize that spend down onto the films in their library. Now, to a certain extent, this is acceptable because you need your sales agent or your distributor to go out there and sell your movie, and it is okay to have business costs. But what they'll do is they'll often inflate those costs by getting the most expensive things possible, which then they bill the filmmaker for. So, unless you're with an A-list distributor and sort of that look of the 5-star experience increases the value of your film, there is no reason for many of these distributors to be spending $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 a night on dinner, drinks, and hotels, and then billing the films in their mid-level library. That should be reserved at the very, very top, that all of their films are making over $10 million or $100 million. That kind of justifies that kind of spend because they are a prestigious company. But for everyone else, there's really no reason this should be happening. Everything should match the level that their films are doing. I get there's a look and I get there's an image to this, but inflating costs at the expense of the filmmakers really isn't a great thing, and some distributors are notoriously bad for this, where they're basically living it up at the expense of the films that they're supposed to be out there selling, and then the filmmaker sees less and less profit. It's all being eaten up by this party lifestyle of these scally distributors. There are many, many more expenses. As I already said before, inflated marketing expenses and fake marketing expenses. I know a girl who has a very small independent film that made some money, and her distributor slapped on to her quarterly report that there was $5,000 in social media marketing expenses. It's absolutely ridiculous to think for a small, tiny sub $100,000 indie movie that is a few years old that a distributor is going to be spending $5,000 marketing it with zero proof. And that's a lot of times is there's no evidence or proof that it was ever even marketed, which is a massive problem. So uncapped expenses and cross-collateralized expenses is a massive problem, and it's something that dishonest distributors and producers do. Now, when producers are honest and producers know what they're doing, net profits are absolutely real. So technically, net profits are all the revenues that come back to the production company after the exhibitor takes their cut, which is 50% of the box office. The distributors recoup their marketing expenses and take their cut of that, which is typically 35%. And then whatever is rest of that will go to the production company. And then the net profits are after the production company pays off all their debt, recoups all their expenses, pays off all deferments, etc., etc. The net profits are what is left over for the producers and the creative shareholders in the company after all expenses have been paid off. Those are considered net profits, and net profits are real when the producers know what they're doing. On my feature film, The Influencer House Massacre, we don't even use the term net profits because that term has been so thrown around and bastardized in Hollywood that nobody wants to hear it. What we're doing on our film is we have gross revenue points. That means that for every dollar that comes back to our company for this film, that our investor will get their share of the first dollar gross that comes in. So if $100 comes in, they'll get $1. If $100,000 come in, they'll get $1,000. If $1 million comes in, they will get $10,000. That is how it works from first dollar in, because on the Influencer House Massacre, we don't have any additional expenses. We don't have any overhead expenses. We're not using debt. We don't have any deferrals. Everyone's paid up front. That means there's no expenses and there aren't any deductions from the money that comes into the company. That is why we have gross revenue shares on our film. This is honesty. In a sense, it is actually net profits. So gross revenue shares, because we don't have any expenses or deferrals or debt to pay off, is actually technically net profits. But we use the word gross revenue shares because 1, there's not a lot of stigma attached to it. 2, it sounds better. And 3, it's very upfront and you know what you were getting. So when producers know what they're doing and when producer is honest, there is a lot of net profits or gross revenue profits to be had that come back to a company. It's just the scally creative bookkeeping that dishonest producers do to make sure that a film never reaches profit. That just means that they continue to deduct expenses against it for all time. So how would a film like Forrest Gump that's made hundreds of millions of dollars never reach net profits? It just means that somehow the producers or the distributor or the creative bookkeepers continue to charge back expenses against the earnings of that film. I don't know how that is possible at this point, but I have heard this story and I've heard it on lots of other films too. It just means that the distributor or the scally producers, they continue to charge back expenses. So let's say the film brought in another $10,000 that month. They say they claim that they spent another $10,000 in marketing it. This can go on in perpetuity forever unless the film is in some honest hands. So net profits are absolutely, absolutely real when the producers know what they're doing. As I mentioned for our film, we run an honest company. We have a producer with a massive track record of getting 7 feature films theatrically distributed, all of which have been successful. And Scott DuPont, our consulting producer, has helped raise financing for over 30 feature films, and all of his films have made money. He has personally shown me case study examples of how very, very small films that are run by good producers have made millions of dollars. Films that are well structured with experienced producers, with known actors in a hot genre, make money. That's just the way it is. Even on a low end, films often make 5 or 10 times their budget easily. On a high end, it can do 400 plus X like Obsession. These films make money. When there's honest producers running it, and we have an extremely honest team with an impeccable track record, films make money. They're out there making money all the time. It's just this bad rep that's happened where there was this really dishonest practice that was accepted as normal with this creative bookkeeping that these distributors were doing, where the contracts they were offering filmmakers that weren't educated were automatically bad. It should have been illegal. It should have been illegal. They were offering filmmakers dishonest and bad contracts up front that, unless the filmmaker knew what they were doing or got a good lawyer, they were screwed from the beginning. They basically signed away their rights and signed away permission for these distributors to steal from them and their films and their producers and their investors in broad daylight. It should have been criminalized. It should have been criminalized, but it wasn't. But everything that is in darkness will come to the light, and the knowledge is out there. The knowledge is out there. And the people that were operating in the dark are falling away. And through the power of the internet, and through the power of YouTube University, and through the power of being able to share information, audiences and filmmakers and people are getting educated and learning the truth of what it should be when everyone is acting honestly. Because there is plenty to go around. There is plenty to go around. Films absolutely make net profits when producers know what they're doing. In our case, for the Influencer House Massacre, our investors will make gross revenues of every dollar that comes into our company from this film, and that is a beautiful thing. Films absolutely make money when producers know what they are doing. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of How Film Financing Works on the Unlimited Creation Show with Cal Barnes. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify for more weekly content, and until then, remember to invest in independent genre horror film.